when the cotton mill was allocating housing. My fiancé coaxed me into bed. When I opened my eyes again, I felt sore but also happy. He said he wanted to give my housing quota to his first love who had returned to the city. The reason was that his first love was single, divorced, and had a child, while I still had him. Amanda. We grew up together with Sarah. We have to help her. I foolishly believed him. It wasn't until I was pregnant and heard him confess his love to his first love that I realized the truth. It turned out that he married me just so that Sarah could stay in the city and settle down. I was in a daze. Accidentally fell into the water. And woke up from the dream with a start. Leo was sitting by the bedside. He said the exact same words as in my dream. Amanda. Sarah has had a tough time these years. Now she's back with her child all alone. And we should give her a hand. When I woke up with a start, gasping for air, these were the words I heard. Exactly the same as in my dream. There was still an embarrassing smell lingering in the air. Leo played with my hair. His movements gentle and tender. But I felt cold all over. I couldn't help but start shaking. Was that a dream? Or the reality of the future? Why did I have such a dream? In a state of confusion, I avoided Leo's kiss. I made up a random excuse and dragged my weak legs away. Leo didn't stop me. Just before I closed the door, his words drifted over in the desolate autumn wind. Don't forget about the housing allocation in the factory this afternoon. I know Amanda is the kindest and definitely won't bear to see Zara continue to suffer. I walked on the street in a daze, constantly thinking about everything that happened in the dream. After I gave my housing quota to Zara, she and her child quickly moved into the new house. And I also found out that I was pregnant. I successfully got the marriage certificate with Leo, got married, and married the person I had liked since I was a child. I was filled with happiness and anticipation as I was pregnant with a new life. But I went home early on the day I was almost due. I was hit hard. And my beautiful dream was shattered. Leo cornered Zara in our wedding room and confessed his love to her. He said that he had loved her all these years. He said that he married me just to have a house for Zara to settle down in. His eyes were red, filled with suppressed and crazy love. He humbly begged Zara to give him a chance to take care of her and her child. In the end, they kissed each other reluctantly. And I, in a daze, with a big belly, accidentally fell into the water and lost both my life and the baby's life. Leo's family and mine were neighbors. And we grew up together. He would help me teach the hooligans who pulled out the valve cores of my bike lesson. He would also take off his coat when I soiled my clothes during my period and ride me home on his bike. When I was 16, my parents died saving Leo's father. In order to keep the house we were living in now, I dropped out of high school and inherited my mother's job. As a result, I became Leo's fiancée. When Leo's father arranged the engagement, he didn't say a word. He didn't object. Nor did he refuse. I always thought that he liked me too. But now, I couldn't tell anymore. I sat blankly in the cold wind. My heart was half cold. But my mind became clear. Anyway, the house is the most important thing for me now. This is the quota my mother left me. The quota I exchanged for giving up my studies. I will never give it to anyone else. I arrived at the meeting room of the factory's property department in advance. The door wasn't closed tightly. Leo's laughter and that of his friends echoed in the empty corridor. Leo, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. You really got our factory's beauty, didn't you? Keep it down. I just thought she had a crush on me for so many years, and thought she was hiding it well. She was kind of pitiful. Just then Zara needed a house. And we had an engagement. So I just went ahead and did it. You have no idea how happy she was when she was with me. Someone asked. So Leo, who do you really like now? If your dad knew you tricked him into bed, wouldn't he skin you alive? Leo clicked his tongue. Of course. You all know that I've liked Sarah since I was a kid. Do you still like her even though she's divorced and has a child? Of course. If it weren't for my parents not accepting her, I wouldn't have married Amanda. If I can't marry the one I like, I'll just marry the one who likes me. At least she's obedient and pleasing to the eye. Isn't she? Leo answered firmly. There was a hint of disgust on his face when he talked about me. The others praised him as a rare infatuated person in the textile factory. They said that Zara was really lucky to be liked by him, as it was a blessing that she had cultivated over 800 years. And I, not being self-respecting and self-loving, deserved to be played with. I clenched my palms tightly outside the door, not daring to make a sound. Leo's father was the deputy factory director, and the people inside were all the children of department directors. Falling out with them now would be of no benefit to my housing allocation. I tried to calm my breathing, but humiliation and regret still welled up like a tide. It turned out that the dream was real. My love for Leo all these years was just a joke to him. If it weren't for the house left by my mother, and if there were no Zara, to him, I was just a compromise. My chest heaved violently. Suddenly, Pedin fulfilled my ancestor. A hand as white as white jade rested on my shoulder. I turned around. It was Zara with a smiling face. She was holding a child, with gratitude and concern in her eyes. Amanda, thank you for being willing to give the house to me. Why do you look so pale? Are you okay? For I stared at her blankly. Zara, who Leo said had suffered a lot in the countryside. She was wearing the latest woolen coat and scarf from the state-owned store. A saliva towel for the child was worth more than half of my monthly salary. She stood there gracefully. It made me, wearing my work uniform, look rough, bloated, and embarrassed. That's right. Someone had said the day she came back, I looked more like the one who had come back from the countryside. But how could I not be embarrassed? Leo had borrowed all my cloth coupons and half of my food coupons to show off for her. These days, I had been eating porridge and pickled vegetables every day. I almost fainted at my workstation several times. But he said that Zara had a child to support, and her stepmother didn't give her a fixed amount of rations. If we both saved a bit and helped her, we could get through it. Amanda, Zara has had a hard life. She used to be such a proud person. We can't let her be looked down upon by others. Leo said this. But he forgot. Or perhaps he didn't care. If it weren't for my parents saving Leo's father, I should be a college student like him now, instead of dropping out of high school in the first year and working 2 shifts in the factory, struggling day after day for a salary of just tens of yuan. I've had a hard life too. I held back the soreness in my eyes. I smiled at her. It's okay, Zara. I was just choked by the wind. I won't waste my tears here. Our voices reached the room. Leo rushed out in a hurry. When he saw it was me and Zara, he froze for a moment. But soon, whatever low sigh, he reached out and put his arm around me, and greeted Zara to enter the room as if nothing had happened. I smiled sarcastically. He really knew how to pretend. 5 The people waiting for the housing allocation this time came one after another. Section Chief Leo of the property department cleared his throat and began to read out the list. When my name was called, Leo interrupted. Uncle Leo, Leo. Amanda and I are getting married soon. And we want to give this housing quota to Zara. What do you think? He squeezed my palm soothingly and gave me a meaningful look. Section Chief Leo smiled and said, of course it's. No. I shook him off forcefully and said loudly, Chief, this is my quota, and I won't give it to anyone else. For a moment, the air in the meeting room seemed to freeze. Leo's friends looked at me in disbelief. The smiling Zara also turned pale. Leo suppressed the anger in his voice. Uncle Yu, there might be some misunderstanding. Amanda and I will talk about it again. He tried to pull me to the boiler room at the end of the corridor. I didn't move. Instead, I stared at the people in the meeting room, and big tears rolled down my face. My mother started working in the factory at the age of 14. She worked there for more than 20 years before getting this house. I don't have my parents anymore. This is the last thing they left me, and I won't give it to anyone else. The humiliation of being betrayed and played with was fully released at this moment. I was crying so hard that I couldn't catch my breath. With red eyes, I apologized to Zara. I'm sorry, Zara. Leo said you've had a hard life. I know you've been through a lot. But I really can't give this quota to you. She was at a loss. Under the surprised or scrutinizing gazes of everyone, she was so embarrassed that she wished she could find a hole to crawl into. I lowered my head to wipe away my tears. hiding the coldness in my eyes. 6. My name was next to the house. And it was stamped with the big red seal of the cotton mill. Leo pulled me to apologize to Zara. He didn't look very happy. But he still forced a smile to soothe her. I'm sorry, Zara. I'll think of other ways to help you with the house and the household registration. Zara also smiled, standing in the wind with the child in her arms. Her eyes were slightly red, and tears were about to fall but didn't. She glanced at me and said in a choked voice, "It's okay, Leo. I shouldn't have asked for Amanda's house in the first place. It's my fault. Don't quarrel because of me." The child in her arms cried out cooperatively. She looked at us apologetically and left in a hurry with the child in her arms. Her back was thin, like a fallen leaf in autumn. Leo stared at her for a long time. The decision had been made. Leo was eager to find a new house for Zara. He frowned deeply and looked at me with an unpleasant expression. "After I settle Zara down, I'll come back and deal with you. But Amanda, I didn't expect you to be so stingy. You've really disappointed me. You don't need to go to the family dinner tomorrow evening." This family dinner was originally meant to introduce me to Leo's relatives. It was like the small wedding feast within their family before the marriage. If the fiancée herself wasn't allowed to appear, it was no less than a humiliation. Logically speaking, I should have felt sad and upset. But now my mind was full of the future in the dream. I listened absentmindedly and even nodded. Okay. It just so happened that I also needed time to verify whether the dream was true or not. You. Leo was so angry that he turned around and strode away. I paused for a moment and walked in the opposite direction. 7. After I died in the dream, my soul was forced to follow Leo. I watched as he got married to Zara with a marriage certificate less than a year after my death. Now I'm also a divorced person. You can't dislike me. Leo's parents naturally didn't agree. He had a falling out with his parents, resigned from the cotton mill, and went south with Zara and the child to make a living. He gently held Zara's face in his hands. "Zara, let's go to a place where no one knows us and start over." I didn't care about their vows of eternal love. What I really cared about was that after they went south, they actually caught up with the trend of the country's reform and opening up and the development of the free market. They did business, sold small commodities, and became self-employed individuals. Step by step, they earned a large sum of money and became households with a fortune of over 100 yuan. On the contrary, the state-owned cotton mill, which had always been a secure job with high welfare, took a downward turn. It stopped allocating housing, no longer accepted the children of employees, and even laid off workers. If all of this is true, I have to find a way to make a living for myself before that happens. 8. I went to the liveliest street nearby. There were quite a few self-employed individuals setting up stalls here. But because I was afraid of being accused of speculation and profiteering, I had never dared to get close. Now that I came closer to take a look, I found that the things were indeed cheaper and more cost-effective than those in the stores. The fabric of the clothes was not only not inferior, but there were also many patterns and decorations that I had never seen before. Seeing that I was fascinated, the anti-stall owner approached me mysteriously. "Girl, these clothes of mine are all purchased in bulk from the south. They are all Hong Kong goods. The most fashionable ones." I picked out a few pieces and casually asked, "Don't they care about it now?" The auntie smiled and whispered, "They don't care about it in the south for a long time already. The policies here still need some time. My son has already completed the procedures in the south, and this is the only thing left. Now the people from the public sector turn a blind eye. As long as it's not too excessive. They don't really care about you." I went to the stalls on several other streets. The replies I got were all similar. It seemed that the dream was mostly true. I returned to Leo's house and packed up the personal items I had brought over before. Looking around, there was still a faint smell lingering in the air. When he pestered me to secretly move in, he said a lot of embarrassing words. From the heart of a shy girl a few days ago, to the current state of being calm and indifferent. Waking up from the dream seemed to happen an instant. Fortunately, having felt I didn't bring many things. After a simple packing, I was ready to leave in a few minutes. The moment I pushed the door open, I bumped into Leo, who was just about to lead Zara in. This house was a welfare allocated by the factory to young cadres. It seemed that he was going to let her live here. It should have been like this earlier. Why did he have to set his sights on my house? Seeing the things in my hands, Leo subconsciously pursed his lips. Zara, you go in first. I have something to talk to Amanda about. Before the door closed, Zara's inquiring gaze swept over me. Then Leo cornered me and said impatiently, Amanda, what kind of temper are you throwing again? I'm not throwing a temper. Leo, let's dissolve our engagement. Nye and I looked at him quietly and opened my palm. Inside was a lustrous jade bracelet. You're back just in time. I'm returning this to you. This was the token of our engagement back then. And now it was just right to return it to its owner. The winter in Sioux City was very cold. When I took my hand out of my pocket, it quickly became ice cold. But I waited for a long time. Leo didn't take it for a long time. I raised my head, feeling a bit puzzled. Why don't you take it? He frowned. And a trace of anger appeared in his eyes. Amanda, there should be a limit to throwing a temper. Don't go too far. I sighed and for the first time thought that Leo was so difficult to communicate with. I'm serious. I'm not throwing a temper. Didn't you say that one should be magnanimous? Since you brought Zara home, isn't it good for me to leave on my own initiative? I didn't understand. Wasn't this exactly what he wanted? Leo didn't answer. His gaze shifted downwards and he stared fixedly at my palm. The north wind blew through the hollowed-out windows of the building. I couldn't stand the cold anymore and retracted my hand first. Leo's expression softened slightly. But his tone was still cold. Don't threaten me with dissolving the engagement at every turn. You know I won't fall for that. As for me and Zara, it's not what you think. I know you really want to marry me. But let's talk about everything after I settle Zara down. Okay? I fell silent. After realizing that I couldn't reason with Leo, I had nothing more to say to him. Since he didn't want the bracelet, it would be the same if I returned it to Uncle John and Aunt Son. Having thought this through, I pushed him aside and was about to leave. Just then, someone came downstairs. In the narrow corridor, Leo looked at me. He didn't stop me again. Leo leaned back on the sofa. His mind was full of Amanda's cold eyes before she left. He was a bit absent-minded. Zara smiled and handed him a glass of water. Her face full of gratitude. Leo, thank you for lending me this house and helping me move my luggage. When I find a job, I will definitely pay the rent on time. Zara was still the same as in his memory. Gentle, sweet, and beautiful. The woolen coat outlined her graceful figure. She was completely different from him and who only liked checkered shirts and small floral patterns. He remembered the madness last night and felt a bit addicted. Suddenly, he regretted speaking so harshly just now. According to Amanda's reticent personality, she must be hiding in some corner and secretly wiping her tears. Right? That's how she was when her parents passed away. She forced herself to say that she was okay. When they finally found her, her little face was deathly pale. And she almost fainted from crying. After all, she was a Svianki who hadn't officially married into his family yet. For the harmony of their future married life, he should still take her to the family dinner tomorrow evening. Thinking of this, Leo tilted his head back and drank the water in one gulp, and a smile unconsciously appeared on his lips. Zara's heart skipped a beat and she said gently, "Remember to apologize to Amanda for me later. I didn't mean to take her house. I just thought that you were about to get married and she would live with you. It would be inconvenient for me to live here with my child. I was in a hurry and came up with a bad idea." She choked up a bit, and her eyes gradually turned red. Zhao Zixuan, who was just 1 year old, heard his mother crying. He walked unsteadily over. One little hand grabbed his mother's dress hem, and the other hand took Leo's. He said haltingly, "Mom, don't cry. Dad, kiss Mom." Zara blushed deeply and quickly picked up the child. "Sorry. He just learned to speak and can't distinguish things clearly yet." Leo didn't care too much. Instead, he bent down and looked at Xiao Ziyi unlovingly. He looked a lot like his mother. His skin was fair. And he was just as intelligent. In Leo's romantic dreams when he was just starting to have feelings for someone, he and Zara also had such a happy family. Although wow. It was impossible for them now. But this didn't prevent Leo from liking this child. He subconsciously fought along with Sarah's words and was a bit dissatisfied with Amanda. What a lovely child. Why couldn't she just do them a favor? Thinking of how she lost her temper and said she wanted to dissolve the engagement regardless of anything, Leo's face gradually darkened. Why was she so unreasonable? In the end, he still decided to give her a small punishment as a warning. Not letting Amanda go to the family dinner and giving her a moderate lesson. So that she could understand. In the future, when the two of them led together, she couldn't be picky about everything with her partner. Section Ed article Truck 11. When I walked out of the dormitory building, it was already dark. I didn't stop walking and submitted an application for leaving my job with pay suspended before the factory got off work. Because I came late, there was only Sister Lee left in the office. She had watched me grow up since I was a child and was a bit surprised. Amanda, aren't you about to get married to Leo soon? Why are you applying for leaving your job with pay suspended at this time? I didn't want Leo to know that I had decided to leave. So taking advantage of having just walked through the cold wind, I sniffled and forced a smile. Aunt Leo, you should have heard about what happened in the property department this afternoon. Right? I want to leave and go south to seek refuge with my distant relatives. Can you keep it a secret for me? The gossip in the factory spread quickly among people of Aunt Lee's age. She slapped her head and suddenly realized. There was also a bit of indignation on her face for me. Okay. Aunt, I promises you that I won't tell anyone about this. I used to think that Leo was a college student and wouldn't do such shameless things. Now it seems that all men in the world are the same. If it weren't for your parents back then, it's uncertain whether he could have gone to that university or not. Humph. An ungrateful wretch. Aunt Lee became more and more excited as she spoke. In the heat of the moment, she rolled up her sleeves and wished she could drag me right then to teach that scumbag man and the mistress a lesson. I couldn't help but laugh, and a warm feeling welled up in my heart. Thank you, Aunt Leo. When I settle down in the South, I will definitely send you some local specialties. She straightened her chest. Oh. Why are you being so polite with me? 12. I've always disliked being indecisive when doing things. Aunt Lee said that it would take 7 days to complete the procedures for leaving my job with pay suspended. The next morning, I carried a bag of fruits. I went straight to Uncle John and Aunt Jean's house. I held the steaming brown sugar water handed to me by Aunt Jean. Uncle and Aunt, I want to dissolve the engagement. In the wisps of mist, Uncle John reacted the most strongly. He picked up a wooden stick and was about to go to the factory to drag the unfilial son back and give him a beating. Amanda, don't worry. As long as your Uncle John and I are still alive, he won't be able to bully you. I knew they were truly good to me. Leo had already been given a beating last night. Leo's father had really laid into him. And it was said that he went to work limping today. But I still shook my head. Uncle, if I get married to Leo, we will be together for a lifetime. One day, you will no longer be around. What should I do then? He doesn't like me. And now I don't want to live with him either. In fact, Uncle John and Aunt Jean weren't on Leo and I were not a good match. He was one of the rare college students among the children of employees. He was also the youngest cadre assigned to the factory, with a promising future. And I, a lowly textile worker. I didn't even finish high school. How could two people with such different lives and experiences be happy together? Uncle John and Aunt Jean fell silent and didn't answer. I sighed and played my trump card. Uncle and Aunt, I think my parents in heaven definitely wouldn't want me to waste my life like this. The matter of my parents was a thorn in the hearts of both me and them. With a thud, Uncle John dropped the stick and sat down dejectedly, and his back visibly hunched over. Aunt Jean also turned her head away and wiped her tears silently. Amanda, our family is sorry for you. I returned the jade bracelet to Aunt Jean and got the certificated dissolution of the engagement as I wished. I left with that flimsy piece of paper. Before going out, I paused for a moment. After thinking about it, I still turned back and wanted to say something. Aunt Jean, who was seeing me out, suddenly brightened her eyes and looked at me hopefully, hoping that I would change my mind. But I just glanced at her. Aunt, please don't tell Leo about the dissolution of the engagement for now. I don't want him to come and cause trouble for me. Okay? After saying that, I strode across the threshold, feeling completely relaxed. From now on, I have nothing to do with Leo. This time, I won't end up like in the dream. I'm going to go south to change my fate, seize that favorable trend, and soar to great heights. 13 Leo casually perfunctorily responded to the compliments from his relatives. His gaze involuntarily glanced towards the door. The family dinner had already been going on for almost half an hour. Why hasn't Amanda come yet? He had clearly revealed the address of the restaurant to her before. Even if he didn't allow her to come, the legs were on her. If she really wanted to come, would he really stop her from entering? In the banquet hall, glasses were clinking. But for no apparent reason. He felt a bit annoyed. He slightly raised his hand to undo the buttons on his wrist. What was even stranger was that Uncle John and Aunt John, who doted on Amanda so much, they didn't mention her even once tonight. They didn't even mention the theme of the engagement at tonight's family dinner. They just said it was to celebrate his return to work in his hometown after graduating from university, and to gather everyone together. It was so strange. Shouldn't they be furious and force him to apologize to Amanda? Leo couldn't help but pull Aunt John aside and tentatively asked in a whisper, "Why hasn't Amanda come yet? Should I go and pick her up?" There was the familiar look of reproach and disappointment in his mother's eyes. But unexpectedly, Aunt John didn't say anything. She glanced at him infuriately and then turned back to the banquet. Leo didn't like this feeling of being out of control at all. He left the restaurant without saying a word. He slightly bent his long legs and leaned against the wall, lighting a cigarette. In the swirling smoke, his expression was cold. He couldn't figure out what his parents and Amanda were up to. Suddenly, a gentle female voice interrupted his thoughts. "Leo, what are you doing here?" He looked up. He saw Zara holding the child, looking at him with a surprised expression. "I just came back not long ago and can't find the nearby wholesale market. Can you help me and show me the way?" Leo didn't hesitate to extinguish the cigarette, but strode towards his Zara with a smile. "Of course." 14 Aunt Lee patted her chest and told me to leave the procedures for leaving my job with pay suspended to her with confidence. She also thoughtfully took a 7-day leave for me, allowing me to have a good rest. With the acquiescence of Leo's father, this matter was well hidden. Leo didn't hear a word of it. I slept at home for a whole day and night. When I opened my eyes again, I felt refreshed. Soon, Manada lo Sarai, I would be able to leave here. I was going to embrace my new life. I yawned and was about to take a nap. Suddenly, something flashed through my mind. Thinking of the child who didn't get to be born in the dream, my face changed abruptly. My gaze slowly shifted downwards. It fixed on my flat abdomen. I suddenly bounced up from the bed, wrapped myself up tightly, and went to the black market. I hoped that everything was still not too late. 15 After my parents passed away, I became an orphan. When I sat alone in the room, I had always hoped that there would be someone in the world who was related to me by blood, so that I wouldn't be alone anymore. In the dream, I was also filled with love for this child. But now, I couldn't give birth to him. I couldn't just bring him into this world without considering anything. Not to mention that my life was unstable, and he wasn't even expected by his father. I would have a child, but at least not now. The father of the child couldn't be such a scumbag either. I gently stroked my abdomen and said sorry in my heart. "Next time, come back into mommy's belly. Okay?" 16 The black market was crowded with people, and everyone was dressed warmly. My attire didn't seem out of place. After inquiring for a long time, I finally found a person selling medicine in the most remote corner. It was a man wearing a hood and a mask. I was in a hurry and approached him without hesitation. "Do you have that kind of medicine here?" The man looked up, revealing a pair of slightly upward slanting dark eyes. What kind of medicine? The man had really nice eyes. A strange thought flashed through my mind. Not caring about the shame, I got straight to the point and said in a low voice, "Abortion pills." He sized me up for a few moments, then lowered his head and rummaged through something. "When was the last time you had sexual intercourse?" Why was he asking this? I was taken aback and hesitated. Having fulfilled my ansai. 3 days ago. He seemed to give a bitter smile. stopped what he was doing. And there was a hint of helplessness in his voice. Girl. What you need most now isn't an abortion, but contraception. Here you go. This is diafilzable from abroad. It's effective for 72 hours. Just take it orally when you get home. There may be side effects like nausea and vomiting after taking it, but these are normal phenomena. So don't worry. If I could have completed my first year of senior high school, I would have taken a course called physiological health. Then I would have known how stupid a mistake I was making today. Unfortunately, I didn't. So I could only silently take the pack of medicine. When I heard the price the man quoted, I gasped. It was almost 2 months' worth of my salary. Seeing my confused expression, the man sighed again. Stretch out your hand. Let me take a look for you. I looked at him warily. What for? Taking your pulse. I still didn't believe his words, and was worried that I had met a quack who was a swindler. But this was the black market. And I didn't dare to cause a scene. After thinking about it, I still stretched out my hand suspiciously. He extended 2 fingers and placed them on my wrist. After a moment, he withdrew his hand, and his deep voice came through the black cloth mask. You should be okay. You don't need to take the medicine. Was he really that amazing? I was just about to refute when I suddenly heard a familiar voice. Leo was leading Zara and buying something at a stall. In the crowded crowd, he tightly wrapped his arm around A's waist and protected her in his arms. Even though there was a distance between us. But he seemed to sense something and turned his head to look in my direction. The moment our eyes met, I was suddenly startled and instinctively wanted to find a place to hide. If Leo found out that I was taking contraceptives at this time, I didn't know how much trouble it would cause. The stall owner noticed my embarrassment, followed my gaze, and then opened his arms to me understandingly. Come on. Hide here. He had a magnanimous expression on his face, looking as if, you're really lucky to be able to hug me. I gave him a sideways glance, turned around, and hid behind him, using him as a cover. Unexpectedly, he didn't play fair and also turned around, complaining, hey, having fulfilled my obsession. You. I suddenly stepped on the man's foot. Shut up. He grimaced and gasped, and his voice obediently became softer. He mumbled discontentedly, what kind of person are you? Leo thought he must be seeing things. Otherwise, how could he have seen someone in the black market who looked so much like Amanda? Even the black cotton padded jacket that person was wearing was exactly the same as the one Amanda often wore. But he quickly withdrew his gaze and focused on accompanying Zara to choose things. He laughed at himself in his heart, thinking that he was probably going crazy. How could a woman like Amanda, who was so honest and decent, have the guts to come to the black market? And be acting intimately with a man. The fact that she had a crush on him for many years was no secret at all. 17 I kept a distance of half a meter from the man. Seeing from behind, his head just happened to be hanging by my neck, looking like affectionate lovers. Leo only glanced at us a few times before looking away. He thoughtfully carried the things they had bought for Zara and left. I heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you. The man waved his hand and was about to take the medicine back. But I snatched it away. Before leaving, I looked at his washed-out cuffs and silently gave him an extra 5 yuan. It wasn't much. Just a token of my gratitude. In the end, I still bought that bottle of contraceptive pills. Because when I was hiding under him, through the gap in the collar of his coat, I saw a familiar white coat and a metal nameplate. It said Ordinary Physician of Sioux City Second Hospital. I took the medicine as soon as I got home and lay in bed as per the doctor's instructions, on guard against the possible side effects. But the pain I had imagined and didn't appear. I was as if nothing had happened. Instead, I fell into a drowsy sleep and had a dream. In the dream, there was a little girl as delicate as jade, running over with a smile and hugging my leg. Mommy. My name is Yin Yin. You have to remember me. I'll come to find you next time. When I woke up again, my face was covered with tears. Yin Yin, Yin Yin. Wait for me. There were still 3 days left before the procedures were completed. During this period, I bought a train ticket to Yucheng in the south. I also stayed at home and packed the things I was going to take with me. After doing all this, I looked at the small courtyard where I had lived for more than 20 years, and felt a bit melancholy. Every plant, every brick and tile here, they all carried the memories of my parents and me. My father used to push me on a swing beside the loofah rack in the corner of the courtyard. My mother also used to bring out a plate of watermelons on a summer night, hold me in her arms, and count the stars in the night sky. I gently stroked the yellowed wooden door. If I could, I really didn't want to leave. But I knew it wasn't practical. In a few years, there would be a policy allowing employees to buy houses. I told myself that this short separation was for a better reunion. I had to make money quickly. One day, I would buy this small courtyard and make it completely mine. 19 The next day, I went to the factory to ask Leo's father to issue a letter of introduction. In just a few days, he seemed to have aged a lot, and there were many more white hairs on his temples. I felt sorry for him. Uncle, you should also take care of your health. I knew that besides my matter, he was more worried about Leo. These days, he had been almost inseparable from Zara every day. He had been busy helping her buy things. And he even tried to use Leo's father's influence to arrange for her to do a clerical job in the cotton mill. Leo's father had of course stopped him. But the rumors had spread throughout the factory. And everyone knew about it. Even these days in the small courtyard, I could hear the neighbors chatting in low voices. The deputy factory director's family is also pitiful. His son has gone crazy from studying. He chases after a divorced woman every day. He even wants to use connections to stuff her into the factory office. Why didn't he inherit any of the good qualities of the deputy factory director? The deputy factory director is such an impartial person. Yes. Leo's father had been honest and clean all his life. The most out-of-line thing he had ever done was to try to arrange for me to work in the office. But I refused. Firstly, I didn't want to exchange my parents' death for this. And secondly, I didn't want to put Leo's father in a difficult position. Unexpectedly, as he was about to retire, he was set up by his own son and got a bit of a stain on his reputation. I advised him, Uncle, children and grandchildren have their own fates. Leo and I are both grown up. We will always have to pay the price for the paths we choose. And it has nothing to do with you and Aunt Song. He sighed and then nodded. He couldn't help but ask, Amanda, can't you really think about it again? Even if we can't be a family. If you stay in Sioux City, your Aunt Song and I can at least take care of you. How can we rest assured when you leave all by yourself? I gently shook my head and gave a smile. Really, I can't. Uncle, I've grown up and I want to go out and give it a try. To see the world. Didn't the great man say that women can also hold up half the sky? In this vast world, I believe I can achieve great things. 20 Leo's father couldn't persuade me and wrote a letter of introduction for me. Along with the letter of introduction, there was also a landline number. Amanda, this is the phone number of the director of the No. to Textile Factory in Yuchang. I have some acquaintance with him. If you're not happy there, you can go to him for help. I was taken aback for a moment. And couldn't help but feel my eyes well up. I sincerely thanked him. Uncle Leo, thank you so much. Then, let out a well sigh. Without hesitation, I turned and left. I was going to the second floor to ask Aunt Leo about the progress of my application for leaving my job with pay suspended. But unexpectedly, as soon as I reached the stairwell, I bumped into Leo who was waiting there. He stared at me and said, Amanda, let's have a talk. I felt annoyed. At this point, I didn't think there was anything left to talk about between us. I took a few steps back and refused silently. His face darkened. Just like a few days ago. He pressed me against the corner of the wall again. He glanced in the direction of Leo's father's office upstairs. And said through gritted teeth in a low voice, Amanda, did you go and complain to my dad again? If there's anything, just talk to me directly. Why are you avoiding me? What kind of temper are you throwing again? It's been 5 or 6 days already. You should stop making a fuss. Right? He leaned closer to me. And there was an offensive smell of alcohol and cigarettes on him. I frowned and kept struggling. Saying calmly, let me go. He ignored me. After clearly seeing the reddish corners of my eyes, he suddenly reached out and stroked them. His tone was stunned. Were you crying? Leo relaxed the strength with which he was holding me a bit. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you unhappy. I just. Why can't you be more sensible and stop being jealous of Zara? Clearly. I'm already your fiancé. Ah, I suddenly bent my knee and gave him a hard kick. Leo curled up on the ground, clutching his stomach in a sorry state. Amanda? He reached out to me futilely. I had no expression on my face and strode over him and left. 21 Ignoring that unpleasant little episode. Leo told me some good news. Your procedures have been approved ahead of schedule. And the documents will arrive tomorrow. I was overjoyed and gave her a big hug. Thank you, Aunt Leo. If it weren't for her doing her best to help me with everything these days, the procedures wouldn't have gone so quickly. There were tears in her eyes as she patted my shoulder. Amanda, you have to take good care of yourself in the future. Our cotton mill will always be your home. I went home with a feeling of joy and gratitude. Thinking about Leo's abnormality today, I quickly took the packed things and went to the guest house. I also changed the train ticket to tomorrow. I would leave as soon as the procedures for leaving my job with pay suspended were completed, so as to avoid any further complications. But unfortunately, the next day, I was blocked by Leo in the factory again. He even tugged at me somewhat humbly. Amanda, where have you been? I went to your home last night. But you weren't there. Have you been deceived by someone else? Please tell me. Okay? He was the one who had deceived me like I was trash. Now he was the one worried that I would be deceived by someone else. To be honest, I didn't quite understand Leo's thoughts. But fortunately, I didn't need to understand his thoughts either. Leo. Zhejuan is ill. Can you help me take him to the clinic? Zara's crying voice echoed in the empty corridor. Leo's action of holding me froze. And then he left without hesitation. Amanda. Wait for me. I'll come to find you tonight. Once again, Leo chose error between me and his first love. But I didn't feel sad at all. Instead, I let out a big sigh of relief. Meeting Zara's complicated and scrutinizing gaze, I even gave a sincere smile. I mouthed silently. Take him away quickly. Yes. I guessed that Leo wouldn't give up easily. So I deliberately went to see Zara last night. I told her the time I would come to the factory today, and the news that I was already planning to leave. Zara was always smart. You see, here she was. I carried simple luggage, bid farewell to the hometown where I had lived for more than 20 years, and took the train to Yucheng alone. The light and shadows outside the window flashed by rapidly, and the trees changed from desolate and withered to lush and green. The moment I got off the train carriage, a warm wave of air hit me. I would start my brand new life here. 22 The days away from home weren't easy. The policies in Yucheng were open, allowing individuals to rent houses. To save money, I rented a single room in a tube-shaped building. During the damp and humid returning to south days, the clothes hung in the corridor sometimes wouldn't dry for half a month, not to mention the sweltering summer that could almost kill people. The rats as big as my face. And the super big cockroaches with double ponytails that could fly. Often, when I woke up from a dream in the middle of the night, I would meet the gaze of the big rat with Mung-beam-like eyes that was screeching. Then there would be a flurry of panicked screams. I held a purple plastic transparent slipper in my hand, and drove the enemy out of my territory. There were hardships in life. And naturally, Petty fulfilled my obsession. There were also sweet moments. It's no exaggeration to say that the styles and patterns of clothes passed down from Hong Kong and Macau here were far ahead of those in Sioux City. Even I, a textile worker, was dazzled. There were also talent markets that could be seen everywhere. Free economy, individual bosses, and independent recruitment. Everything was full of vitality. It was as if it was opening its arms and inclusively accepting everyone who was working hard to live. I quickly found a job in a garment factory that was related to my field. The boss's wife went to Hong Kong City once every half month and brought back the latest best slang styles. Then we workers would analyze the samples, select the materials, make the patterns, make the clothes, and sell them. The boss's wife wore a full set of gold jewelry, had a delicate small woolly perm, and stepped on the sewing machine with us day and night. She said, Pretty girls. The policies can change at any time. We don't know how long we can keep making money from this job. Let's make as much money as we can while we can. Okay? We all called her Sister Zen. It was said that she was originally a poor person from a small fishing village. She was an orphan girl whose parents died early. Until something called a special economics zone emerged out of nowhere and took away the land of her home. The gears of fate started turning from then on. Sister Zen was never stingy with our wages. She even took out a small portion of the commission and distributed it to us. She said, "You pretty girls work so hard for me. Naturally, I can't treat you badly. Right?" In the first month when I received my salary, I held a salary that was nearly 10 times higher than that in the cotton mill. I just felt my little heart pounding. Who would turn down money? In response to Sister Zen, there were the buzzing and clicking sounds of the sewing machines one after another. After working for half a year, I had saved a sum of money that I couldn't even have dreamed of in Sioux City. Who would have believed that I was already half and then another half of a 10,000 due on household? But this wasn't enough. Thinking of the gimmick of Leo being a 10,000 due on household in the dream, I was filled with a strange sense of competitiveness. If he could do it, why couldn't I? You know, before I dropped out of school, Leo was always the second in our class. And I was the one who always topped the class rankings. In terms of intelligence and ability, I, Amanda, am by no means inferior to anyone. 23 Sister Zen has been a bit worried recently. She was gradually transforming her business. The clothes we made ourselves were sold in the ordinary market, and the ones purchased in bulk from Hong Kong City were sold to high-end customers. She had originally made an agreement with the cooperative in Hong Kong City, but unexpectedly, the person in charge on the other side was suddenly replaced by a Chinese American who had studied in the United States. The person kept mumbling words like KBC like a spell, and Sister Zen couldn't understand a word. She complained to us in a coquettish way. "What should I do? Pretty girls? Do I really have to find a translator? It's so expensive. I should thank Leo's father." During the summer vacation after Leo's college entrance examination, he somehow heard that fluent oral English would lead to a better future in university. He specially invited an English teacher from Suzhou University to teach Leo at home for a while. He also stuffed me in there, under the pretext of asking me to supervise Leo for him. After listening in during my spare time from work for a few months, leaving other things aside, I could at least have simple oral communication. I recommended myself to Sister Zen. Her eyes lit up, and she decisively took me to Hong Kong City with her. The row upon row of tall buildings, the busy central streets with flowing traffic. Everything was so dazzling that I couldn't take it all in. Like Granny Liu entering the Grand U Garden for the first time. Before entering the conference room, I was so nervous that my palms were sweating. I held a book of professional terms related to clothing that I had specially bought from the bookstore in my hand and recited them repeatedly. On the other hand, Sister Zen was smoking a slender lady's cigarette and leaning against the wall casually to comfort me. "It's okay, Annie. If it doesn't work out, we'll just go back and hire a translator. I just brought you here to give it a try. Don't put too much pressure on yourself." Annie was the English name I had chosen for myself. I also chose an English name for Sister Zen, Jennifer. It was simple and easy to remember. And she liked it very much. I nodded. But then I saw that Jennifer's other hand hidden behind her back was also trembling slightly. I couldn't help but laugh. Sister Zen gave me a shy and annoyed look. "After all, I've invested half of my wealth in this. Isn't it normal to be nervous?" "Yes. Yes, hadn't fulfilled say. Yes. Everything you say is right, Sister Zen." The little episode outside the conference room relieved my nervousness. The terrifying flood monster that I had expected, muttering those dreadful spells, didn't show up. The person in charge of the connection was a woman with an elegant temperament, wearing a neat wavy curly hair, fair skin, and a red dress. Sophia. As soon as I entered the room, I was so stunned by her beauty that I almost tripped and fell. I stared at her blankly. It wasn't until she tapped on the glass tabletop neither too lightly nor too heavily that I came back to my senses and got to the point. She didn't talk to me about those tongue-twisting professional terms. Instead, She focused on asking about the sales volume of their clothes in Yuchang, and the patterns, styles, and fabric materials that customers on the Chinese mainland preferred more. There were also the normal aspects of pricing, selling, and logistics. Sister Zen answered. And I translated. Although it was a bit stumbling. We finally managed to conclude this business deal. It turned out that a small textile worker like me, as long as I had an excellent craftsmanship and additional skills, I could also, just like what was written in the newspaper, sit at the negotiation table with capable people and chat and laugh freely. Before we left, Sophia gave us a model of a small tram with the characteristics of Hong Kong City. It would make a tinkling sound when it moved. As a return gift, Sister Zen and I gave her the embroidery silk with the characteristics of Sioux City, as well as the popular vanishing cream on the Chinese mainland. The business went unexpectedly smoothly. With a wave of her hand, Sister Zen took me on an expensive return flight. When we came, we took a ship. The ticket price was 93 yuan per ticket. And I already thought it was extremely expensive. I was so seasick that I vomited until I was dizzy. And Sister Zen even made fun of me for being a landlubber. I didn't expect that on the return trip we would take a plane ticket that cost 270 yuan per ticket. Looking down at the whole world from the porthole, at a height of tens of thousands of feet, all my troubles seemed to become small and insignificant. I love this feeling of freedom so much. 24 on New Year's Eve. Amidst the continuous sound of firecrackers, we stayed in front of the black and white TV that Sister Zen had bought at a high price and watched the first Spring Festival Gala. There were Huang Mei Opera, the sketch-eating chicken, and the artist-teacher Li, whose singing voice was as ethereal as that of a lark. Sister Zen was in a bad mood for a while, because she couldn't get through on the phone to request a song. However, when she heard the beautiful and melodious song Nostalgia, that seemed to be asking the soul, she brought a small stool and squeezed past us eagerly, then stayed in front of the TV, listening intently. After being away from home for a year, I also missed my hometown a bit. I couldn't help but run out, wanting to make a phone call to Sioux City, even if it was just to ask about everyone's current situation. I called the grocery store at the entrance of the alley and asked the store owner to call Aunt Song. Amanda, is that you? How are you doing there? Hearing that I was doing well, Aunt Song's voice choked up, and she couldn't help but complain. You child. Why didn't you call and tell us after you settled down? Your Uncle Leo and I have been worried about you for a long time. Even through the twisted telephone line, I could imagine the appearance of Aunt Song with red eyes on the other end of the phone. In the end, it was only after I promised to call back once a month and gave her my current address that I managed to soothe her. After the Spring Festival ended, the busy working life came in full swing again. I helped Sister Zen conclude several more business deals one after another. She took a fancy to my learning ability and specially sent me to an adult evening school. At a celebration banquet, she got me drunk with beer and learned about my past in Sioux City. I don't know what kind of poor little thing she thought I was in her heart, but she actually offered to bear the cost of my evening school. I declined repeatedly, but I still couldn't refuse. In the end, she paid half of the cost, and I paid the other half. She smiled and poked my nose. What do you know? This is what I call an investment. If you run away and quit after finishing the evening school, just wait and see if I don't teach you a lesson. I giggled foolishly and hugged her arm like a silly girl. 25 The foreign trade business of clothing became more and more prosperous. We not only purchased goods from Hong Kong City, but Sophia also took a fancy to our exquisite silk and embroidery and low-cost labor. She, with great foresight, ordered a batch of clothing from the Chinese mainland and offered us a price that we couldn't refuse. Sister Zen and I were a bit worried. Will there really be a market for it? Sophia smiled and stroked the soft silk. Don't worry. Sell ordinary clothes to Southeast Asia and silk to the high-end market. Your products are of good quality and low price, and I can make a profit. Sister Zen gradually delegated the power in her hands to those capable employees who had originally followed her in the factory. And I, naturally, was in charge of the foreign trade section. I mainly contacted Sophia and the others on a daily basis and explored new markets. We small bosses were extremely busy. Sister Zen forgot her friends once she saw a handsome guy She actually took a fancy to a middleman named Brother Kyung. Wow. He had 8-pack abs, a wheat-colored complexion, and a tough guy appearance. Sister Zen, the little wealthy woman, was eager to act. She won him over in less than 3 months and made him completely obedient. She would occasionally call him to the factory to help us move goods, attracting a lot of envious and jealous glances. Sister Zen flicked her hair and casually said, "I'll give you a raise." Then no one paid attention to Brother Kyung anymore. They all wished they could prostrate themselves at Sister Zen's feet and hug her legs, shouting for her love. Amidst the cheers, Sister Zen poked my shoulder. "Pretty girl. Do you want to have a relationship too? I have a lot of good resources. There are teachers and doctors, which are just suitable for a good girl like you. We are rich and good-looking now, and this is the best age for us to fall in love." The corners of my mouth twitched. I couldn't have imagined that after she stopped working, she would actually become a matchmaker. I pushed aside her soft waist and couldn't help but give her a dirty look. "Sister Zen, I don't have that much free time. It's true that we are rich and good-looking, but I'm not free. If I stop working, I'll stop eating. I don't dare to waste my time on other things." Sister Zen snorted and laughed a few times, then raised her hand and handed me the address of a restaurant. "I don't care about you. I'll give you a night off on Friday. With pay. You can go if you want. And it's okay if you don't. As for men, I have plenty of them. I'll find you a better one." Well, it sounded even more like she was a matchmaker. I took the piece of paper. Of course, I didn't go 26 during this period. I always received letters from Sioux City. Uncle Leo and Aunt Song sent me some money every month. I didn't touch it and saved it intact. Leo actually wrote to me as well. I didn't read any of his letters and burned them as trash. However, once, I actually received a letter from Zara. In the letter, she said that she was pregnant with Leo's child, but Leo didn't want to marry her. She actually thought that the root cause was me and wanted me to persuade him. I was skeptical. But thinking of Aunt Song's choked voice and the white hair on Uncle Leo's temples, I still couldn't help but write a short letter to Leo. I said, "Uncle and Aunt are getting old. Leo, you are their only support. It's time for you to grow up." In the following 2 months, I didn't receive a single letter. I think love is really a terrible thing. I lost myself before, and now Leo and Zara are entangled. I have to stay away from love with respect. Isn't it a pity to use such a wonderful thing as paid leave for a blind date? I slept until noon for the first time, then tidied myself up and started strolling on the street. There were delicious food, beautiful people, and beautiful scenery. I lingered in the most bustling commercial street in the city center. I accidentally spent almost half a month's salary. At the same time, I felt that my muddled heart became clear. My whole body was filled with a happy atmosphere. I carried big and small bags and went home. As soon as I turned into a small alley, I saw a pregnant woman leaning against the wall, moaning, "Help me. My water has broken." My head went dizzy, and I immediately ran out of the alley to ask for help. Someone immediately called the nearest hospital. There was also a kind passerby on a bicycle who immediately stepped over the bike. He borrowed a flatbed cart and huffed and puffed to send the pregnant woman to the hospital. We were so tired that we were out of breath and collapsed in the hospital corridor. I lost one of my shoes, and my exquisitely applied makeup was all smudged. The passerby was also in a sorry state, with stains all over his face and body. The family members of the pregnant woman who rushed over in a hurry kept thanking us. We smiled at each other, waved our hands, and left. As soon as I left the hospital gate, I had the opposite of a happy ending and sprained my ankle. The passerby stopped in front of me with the borrowed flatbed cart. He made a raised eyebrow movement that looked somehow familiar. "Come on. I have to return it anyway. I'll be a good person to the end and give you a hand by the way." After returning the flatbed cart, the passerby used his bicycle to send me and the big and small bags to the downstairs of my building. Sister Zen and Brother Kyung were actually waiting there. Seeing my sorry state, Sister Zen rushed up with a scream. "Amanda, what on earth happened to you?" She glared at the passerby menacingly. "Ethan, is this how you go on a blind date? You even made the pretty girl's foot swollen? What a familiar name. What a cliché plot. The passerby and I looked at each other. Both with wide eyes. 27 the next weekend. I had a paid lead and obediently had a meal with Ethan in a restaurant. It was so embarrassing. The doctor who gave me the contraceptive pills actually became my blind date. How could this be? Ethan coughed lightly twice. His eyes wandering. It really wasn't abortion pills. It was contraceptive pills. It turned out that I had unconsciously blurted out my thoughts. And Ethan obviously remembered me too. It was even more embarrassing. I wished I could go back and work overtime without pay. Rather than suffering here. The meal ended hastily. Ethan waved at me, goodbye. I thought in my heart that it would be best if we never met again. But before I could think of the harsh words for 2 seconds, Leo suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He still liked to grab my wrist. Amanda. I finally found you. I thought he was a hooligan and instinctively slapped him. Only after slapping him did I see Leo's face clearly. He had become much uglier after not seeing him for 2 years. He had a scruffy beard and his eyes were bloodshot. It cast a shadow over his originally handsome face. That's why I couldn't recognize him at first sight. Leo said that he wanted to rekindle our relationship, and that he later realized that he loved me. For Zara, it was just a habitual liking from his youth. I didn't know what nonsense he was talking about. I was so angry that I didn't want to have a tug of war with him in public. I casually made up an excuse. You're too late. I'm already in a relationship. Leo's eyes were red. I don't believe it. Amanda. I already know I was wrong. Come back to Sioux City with me. While we were in a dispute, a hand suddenly reached out. It grabbed Leo's wrist and gently twisted it backward. Click. Leo covered his hand and moaned. Ethan looked at him coldly. She doesn't want to pay attention to you. Can't you see that? Also, haven't fulfilled my obsession. I'm her boyfriend. If you have anything to say, talk to me. Leo looked as if he was about to break down. Amanda. Is what he said true? I nodded, yes. So please don't disturb my life anymore. Uncle Leo is about to retire. He can't stand any more troubles. If you still consider them your parents, go home early. A few days ago, Aunt Song suddenly called me and said that Leo had a conflict with Ben and ran away from home. I didn't take it seriously. But it turned out that he actually came to find me. It was simply absurd. 28 Leo didn't give up and followed me and Ethan for many days. Ethan and I had to pretend to be a couple and started dating and strolling on the street. We had to chat during this period. We got to know each other much better after coming and going. I learned that he had to go to the black market to be a medicine vendor in order to raise money for his seriously ill mother back then. In the end, his mother still couldn't be saved. And he didn't want to stay in that sad place. So he came to Yucheng in the south. It has a similar meaning to my life. I felt more of a sense of empathy. I no longer felt embarrassed when I saw him. And instead, we became very good friends. I found that we both love freedom and are both bold in thinking and daring to take risks. Finally, having fulfilled my one evening, a fun and I sat by the sparkling riverside. In the afterglow of the setting sun, we couldn't help ourselves and exchanged a naive and tender kiss. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Leo staggering away. But I was unhappily turned my head back. Amanda. Focus. There was a trace of jealousy and envy in his eyes that was hard to detect. It was the first time I saw him with such an expression, and I burst out laughing. Ethan blushed because of my laughter and grabbed my hand angrily. He gritted his teeth and said, Amanda. I'm telling you. I don't care what you had in the past. But if you dare to play with my feelings and abandon me in the future, You'll what? I raised my eyebrows and looked at him with great interest. We haven't even confirmed our relationship yet. And you're already so jealous. What will you do in the future? I got up lightly and paced along the riverbank with my hands behind my back. Ethan chased after me, wrapped his arms around my waist, picked me up, and started spinning me around. I don't care. Anyway, I'm yours now. And you can't be a heartless woman. Our laughter echoed. It startled flocks of birds to fly by. I kissed Ethan's cheek. I couldn't help but sigh. For some people, Being friends and being lovers are really different. A good lover will resonate with you on the same frequency and chase the light together with you, while a bad lover will drag you down into the abyss and make you lose yourself. I'm glad that I have escaped from the abyss and am embracing the sun. 29 From Leo's perspective. That day, when Leo saw the sweet smile on Amanda's lips in the setting sun, he felt as if he had been hit on the head. He had been deceiving himself that man was just a pretext and a found. Amanda was just angry with him. So she did that. Later, he thought a lot. He had indeed gone too far. Amanda was his faying key. But for the sake of others, he had hurt her feelings again and again. But now, he couldn't deceive himself anymore. No one knew better than him the look in Amanda's eyes when she was in love. It was like a lake. It tolerated everything silently. No, it was still different. At least he had never made her laugh so heartily. Leo returned to Sioux City and married Zara. However, every month, he would take a train to Yuchang. He would stay in the tea shop next to Amanda's clothing store for a whole day. Zara had a quarrel with him more than once. But he tilted his head and said, "Zara, you've already settled down in the city and have a home. Haven't you? How can you still expect the love that I gave to Amanda?" What happened between him and Zara had a very bad impact. And ultimately, having fulfilled my share, it affected his future. Over the years, the college students of the same batch had either been promoted or received salary increases. Only he was still in the same position as before. Without any progress. He had resentment towards Era in his heart. For him, only by seeing him could his heart find a moment of peace. But when he came to the tea shop again, he didn't see that familiar beautiful figure. After making some inquiries, he found out Amanda had returned to Sioux City with her husband and child to buy a house. He rushed back to Sioux City in a hurry, wanting to say that he could help her with the procedures and go through the formalities. But when he arrived at Amanda's family courtyard all covered in dust, he saw the person he had been longing for snuggled in Ethan's arms, telling interesting stories about her childhood. They also had a little girl as delicate as jade in their arms. That was their 2-year-old daughter, Song Yin Yin. The end of the full text.